Okay, and we're back again. This time we're joining you from the tap house in Otaniemi of the FatLizard Brewing Company. So if you hear any clinks, clunks, or forklift trucks beeping in the background, that's just a natural part of the environment that we're currently in. I have to say, as always, thank you to the guys at FatLizard who make both fantastic beers and amazing audio experiences for us. This is a quick coffee break episode, so we're going to just catch up with the team. How are you guys doing? Annalie, how are you?
I'm fine. I have started in a new company.
Oh, yeah?
Yes. And it's interesting. It's my 4th week starting today, Monday. And new culture, new ways of working, new people.
You gossip on the way home?
Yeah, I haven't really been indulged into gossip yet. But yeah,
Congrats.
I'm probably the subject of the gossip.
So yeah, exactly. Although it's a new company, I guess we can say it, or do we bleep it out? But it's Wärtsilä, and its stock price is up like 10% since you joined. So brilliant start. Well done.
Thank you. We'll keep on that. Yeah.
Alexei, how you doing?
I actually have a question to Anneli first. Did you ask for a bonus? Because now 10% stock price has increased after you joined. I think there's a fair share of yours as well in this. But this is still a honeymoon.
This is still honeymoon, very much, yeah. But perhaps I need to have my performance appraisal first in order to ask for bonus.
Okay, that links nicely to what I was going to say about my current life. Well, it's been quite hectic lately. So in my role, I actually involved in quite a few. We call them my dialogues or performance appraisals, and it's been really kind of eye-opening in many ways. I find it really useful to talk to your colleagues, to your team members, and see what's on their minds. You also learned a lot about the organization, and I really started to appreciate one thing in me, actually my listening skills. I think I'm really good at that. Just say nothing and keep listening.
Yeah, you need that for performance reviews. How big's your team?
Well, the universities they work in a special way, so there's no really kind of superior or supervisor subordinate relationships. But we would talk about like how big is your team, basically at this very moment, how many people kind of supposed to report to you. I think I have something like 20 plus people, plus the PhD students.
Yeah, that's pretty. That's a lot. That's a lot of reviews to conduct. That's a lot of time.
Mark hasn't done.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah. How are you?
Me, I just got back from Milan, so I was in Milan with a buddy. There was a football game, so AC Milan versus Inter Milan was last Monday, and the guy I went with was like my best friend in high school. So this is something we talked about doing when we were like 12 years old, something like that. And careers and jobs and time and families and all the rest of it being what it is, we haven't really had the chance to do it over the last 30 years. But now actually calendars lined up, the opportunity came up and we went to Milan. Milan's gorgeous city. It was also the end of design week, so we got to see like a bit of Marimekko and a couple of art exhibitions, so we got like crazy lucky with that. And I'm living in the, that feeling that you get when you come back from a trip and you're not quite back in like work mode and you're truly happy. For that brief time. Yeah, so I still have that like vacation feel going on now. Yeah.
So, Bella, how are you doing?
Thanks, I'm fine. Just had my first driving lesson after 10 or 11 years and a little bit shaken up ever since then. We still stayed only on the parking lot. But yes, I have to give great feedback to my driver instructor because he was so calm and so chill throughout the whole lesson, even though at some points maybe he shouldn't have been. But yes, hats off to that driving instructor.
Was he handsome?
Yes, very handsome. We still have 4 lessons to go. He was the best.
There used to be this story about driving, what do you call them?
Instructors
Having the highest suicide rate. Finland. You can believe this if you want, but just
Welcome to your traditional Finnish Monday morning coffee break. Was there any research on why?
I don't know if this is based on data or just
Or just anecdote.
Just an anecdote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that tells you something about the quality of students, maybe, that they teach.
Yeah. But it's good that he's chill.
Yeah. So I'm going to come back to 20 plus people. You know, it's an interesting thing because, one thing I know from multiple companies is, you know, the way we do things like performance management and reviews, it's the same. It's the same as we've been doing it for like the last 10, 15, 20 years. But I think the big difference between now and sort of 20 years ago is the average team size 20 years ago was like 7 or 8 people. Like it was really like the old nuclear family of a team, like 7 people, 8 people, all co-located, all with a very similar job type that could trade and share work. Now it's really like most managers deal with 10, 15, 20, 20 plus people to deal with. And when you've got 20 plus people to deal with, like from a performance review perspective, it's really then hard to keep everybody happy and then to keep track of all of the different myriad challenges that people are going through, right?
Yeah. Do you meet them over throughout the year, or to give feedback, or is this once a year type of happening?
Well, usually it's once per year, but of course you're really close people you're working with, you meet them more often, and it's kind of not the formal procedure, but you kind of talk about, you know, what they do and how they do things. Well, I agree that this, 20 plus people in the team, that's a lot. And there are a lot of demands actually. You cannot make everyone happy, that's true. So that's why listening and not promising anything helps. And well, another thing is that I've been trying to do is to kind of talk quite a lot about well-being. So we're somehow not really hiding behind this well-being talk, but I think that's really important. And by talking about well-being, you can actually kind of find this common ground with the person also, that that he or she will also start to see that maybe it's not that simple, that everything that he or she wants is realistic, but then we do care about the well-being of this person, that he or she feels good, and there's nice collective, nice relationships. The overall kind of work is not just part of bigger life picture. So kind of trying to make people feel better in this way. So that's what I've been trying to do, at least in those.
Oh, that's an interesting thing when you say that you cannot promise or you cannot make all the wishes come true. Perhaps I was and am a bad boss, but I never felt that I need to solve the problems. Of course, if there is something I can solve, is something that a person doesn't know, or there is something I can offer. But I never felt that I need to solve it. It was more I can give tools for that person either to understand the situation differently or solve it for themselves. But I don't know if that's right or wrong, but it just comes to my mind.
You can't step in too much for your team. All development or all personal development has to be sort of self-initiated, but bosses do play a pretty big role in opening doors and opportunities and all the rest of it. One of the biggest challenges, particularly if you've got 20 plus people, is how many opportunities are there realistically that you can fit to your team. Because I remember years ago at a random company, I think our salary budget for the round was like 1%, 1.2%. And you have sort of 10, 12 people, and you go, okay guys, does everybody want 0.1%? Or do we want to fight each other for the 1.2% that's on offer in terms of salary? There's obviously horizontal and learning and all that other stuff, but when it comes down to it, usually it's kind of a bit of a scrap for opportunities, for new projects, for money. And if you've got a lot of people, it's unlikely you're going to have also the same amount of opportunities. Most times I suppose it's always the case that there's more people than there are opportunities, something like that.
Yeah, and then big thing, of course, at least I think in our organization, is this fairness. So if you do something or you give something in terms of resources or things like that to someone in your team, then it should be fair towards others. They should be entitled to that as well. and that's where the restrictions come in. So like we have this some budget negotiations and so on, who gets the money, research budgets and things like that. So if one person gets it, then it means that others should be allowed to use that as well.
Yeah.
At least in the academic environment, that's how it works.
Okay, now I get it. I think, being generous with opening doors, connecting people to other networks or other people, etc., is, I think, the best thing a manager can do in those situations. One thing that I found always when I had a very big team, now I have a small team, found difficult was when I suggested for the team members, when they wanted some developmental things happen to them, then when I said that I can connect you to somebody or a network outside this company, and the response very often was, yeah, but I don't have time.
Yeah.
And that frustrated me extremely, because you want development, but you want to be spoon-fed with the development. It needs to be near and easy to grasp, but you're not able to. And even though I, as a boss, said you can carve out a day or you can carve out a week and do that, whatever it is, the response often was, no, but there is no time. I cannot, because then I need to, I anyhow need to do that stuff.
Yeah.
And that was something that I felt was really frustrating. It was counterintuitive to sort of growth mindset, or
Yeah, but if you remember a couple of episodes ago, one of the first episodes we did with Hanneke, so she said she was really deliberate, right? She was one of the few people that intentionally carves time out of her calendar every week for personal development. And if you don't block that time for personal development, then of course, there's always work. There's always more work of one sort or another that's going to kind of overload you. So most likely in those situations, what's happening is your guys or the team, they're not thinking about personal development or opportunities in a kind of pragmatic way. Like, they're just literally not blocking the time. And that's also a pretty hard thing, because in most companies, if you go like, hey, the next couple of hours I'm going to just be focusing on me for a bit, that doesn't go down well. People don't tend to respond well to that. So yeah, but it's a bit, it's always quite tricky, because on the other side of the fence, I've been given the feedback before that's basically been like, stop asking for stuff.
That's actually quite interesting question I've been thinking about lately. Like, to what extent a development is responsibility of the person in question, or it's more like organizational responsibility, or where's the balance between these two? The other day there was a seminar about language, and I think my main kind of point there was that quite often organizations kind of assume that this is like a personal responsibility of a foreign person who comes to a new country to invest in learning the language. Of course, organizations do create some possibilities, like, there's a course, go and take it. But in the end, if you fail to do this, it's your personal failure. So that tends to be kind of general attitude. And kind of in contrast to that, if we change the mindset towards that if organization wants to benefit from this employee and keep him or her, so it should be organizational responsibility to ensure that actually it is a success story with the language. And okay, there was a debate actually in the audience after I made this statement that people, some people were on my side, others were saying, no, what is this? It's personal responsibility. So what do you guys think? Not only about language, in general.
I do think I have had several positions in my team open, job ads out there. What I added there was that English is required, because we're talking about communications. In English, Finnish is a plus. And I did this on purpose because I wanted to people feel included, that they can, apply, and I have a broader group of people applying for the jobs. And however, having said that, and that is how I think in the work context, that's exactly how I see it. But I do think it's easier for a foreign person to be somewhat fluent in the everyday stuff, going to the shop, going to the bank, going to the post office. I think you cannot be screwed that easily if you have a little bit of understanding what those guys are speaking in this weird language. But otherwise, I feel English is just fine.
I mean, it's a bit, so there's two, integration and personal development are slightly different, but the thing they have in common that I can testify to is the gap, right? So you have to have obviously a willingness to learn and develop, whether you're trying to assimilate into a new country or whether you're trying to go for the next stage in your career. But if the gap is like really far, right? So whether you want to become like a naturalized Finnish citizen or whether you want to become like a CEO, that's a multi-phase, multi-level journey where you have to build skills and experiences. And if you're asking a foreigner to come from nothing and then start work with not just the language, but the culture, the subtext, the cultural references, the inside jokes, that's too far. Like just from nothing to that that's a big leap. And so the organization has, in that sense, a responsibility to make sure that the individual has all of the tools necessary to get into that space. So like you're good, like I'm sure there's lots of different sort of integration programs in Finland. I've never seen one that covers things like Finnish humor or Finnish coffee culture, which is not the same as fika, the Swedish equivalent, or Finnish managerial speak, or Finnish rally driver speak, which is its own specific thing. But I think that's the thing, is that you can't take the individual the entirety of the way, but you have to understand the gap from where they start to where we want them to go.
Okay, so what I was coming from, if you kind of your approach is that it's partial, at least, as organizational responsibility. Language is just one example of this. I mean, think about new skills related to AI, for instance. Then very practically, the way it's supposed to work, that then there should be some kind of KPIs that people would be, even if they're not motivated, but there is a kind of external motivation in this. If the person actually fulfills them, learns the language, becomes better with the AI tools, any kind of development, then he or she actually gets, some kind of rewards for that. I mean, good old, motivational stuff. But of course, if the thinking is that this is purely personal responsibility, then he or she or employee fails in this. There's no integration, there's no upgrade in skills. And in the long term, it's not sustainable because this employee will leave the organization and the organization will not be able to benefit from the talent.
Are you asking if the person goes through the journey, let's say it's AI rather than language, right? They go through the journey, they learn all the stuff, but then they don't end up taking the next step. Then they leave, or we don't get the benefits of it. I mean, the idea, I suppose, the difference, I suppose, is from the personal perspective, your responsibility is to try and get to the next stage. But from the organizational point of view, your job isn't to assimilate everybody. It's just to assimilate enough of the people or enough of the talent that sustains the organizational direction, right?
Yeah, but then here comes the well-being angle, right? So organizations do have responsibility for employees, for the well-being of the employees, so that people feel welcome, supported. They feel important in the sense that organization invests in them and supports them in all these things like language learning or learning new tools that would be useful for their career in the future. So, to me, this is a debatable issue.
Yeah, but I think, it's not, it's go back to our old friend Maslow, right? So the organization is only really responsible for 2 levels, 3 levels. We pay the salary, do the tasks, we keep things interesting, you give you community and part of the rest of it. We can't deliver you self-actualization. You know what I mean?
Is that so? Is that so? Maslow, it's such an old stuff. For how long are we going to refer to 1950s, or what was that?
Well, you can't be. So you're going to bear the responsibility that everybody has the perfect life. Because if you take ultimate responsibility from the complete organizational point of view, then you have to be willing to support people in whatever they want to do.
I would quote John Lennon from 1970. Imagine, that everybody lives in this, with great level of well-being and and the self-realization everywhere. Nothing to fight for.
Okay, but if we're going to do this, imagine role play, right? And I'm self-actualizing, then you have to take the responsibility for example, like a leader that's perfectly comfortable with their lot in life, that's perfectly comfortable continuously managing a team that doesn't grow and doesn't go anywhere. So it's a bit of it's a stretch that if you want to take responsibility, and the truth is, not everybody will want to continue to develop forever. There'll be lots of people who are happy the way they are and just kind of want the world to adapt to them rather than them adapting to the world.
And I'm supposed to respond to that. And we're talking about authenticity in leadership. Well, that's a deep topic, and there's lots of things, but I think again the kind of two opposite ways of thinking about this is to what extent you can just be yourself as a leader and not care about anything else going around you or anyone. And then opposite of that, so to what extent you need to comply and change yourself and like kind of fake it also, right? In order to be effective. So I haven't made a decision for myself yet.
But I think that's totally audience related. I mean, you can be authentic within your, peer group or in the sauna with your peer group, but then, you always
contextual.
I think you always need to take into account what's your audience, who are the
But
people.
what about these big guys who run big companies, who have hundreds of thousands of people they're responsible for? So the difference between the public persona and your actual self.
Yeah, there's one anecdote from Alf Rehn's book that always comes to my mind. He was hired. I think used to be työelämä professor somewhere, perhaps Aalto. Åbo. Okay. And he was hired as a consultant to help with a company to solve the leadership problem. The leaders in this quite traditional company should have been less command and control, more empowering. And then there was this team where there was a leader who was very traditional, and he followed the leader around. He discussed with all the team members, and the team members, what they said to him was, listen, he's an asshole, but he's our asshole. So he was very authentic in his way, probably. He was what he was. They had accepted it. They got good results, and that was they were sort of used to it.
So that's an interesting question. You can do whatever you want as long as you get the numbers and the results you want. I seem to remember having some discussions with sales guys around very similar, very similar conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I suppose that is the question, which is that how much harm if you're an authentic leader that's like has some antisocial or aggressive behaviors, if your team's all right with it.
But this team, which had worked with him probably a long time, was fine with it. But it doesn't work when you have a new person coming into the team.
Oh yeah.
That doesn't work, because that person will definitely be insulted and feels bullied and rightly so, probably. And it's not a sustainable way to lead. I'm not somehow saying that's, but there is the other side of the authenticity.
I think that's a really good, because the opposite is true, right? Like, so in the extreme, obviously, like if it's too difficult to acclimate to the team, then it's a problem. In the other extreme, right? So if you have a manager or a leader that's really careful all the time, that's completely PC, that says only the things that are like allowed to be said and gets no controversy or no fun or none of that, then you give the control, in a sense, to the first person who wants to complain, right? And that's also not sustainable for a team, because they won't move forward, they won't hit their goals, they won't achieve. They'll just spend all of their time regulating each other on what's the right thing to say and what's the wrong. So I think there's a definite like balance to be had between like this authenticity and then the group and what the group has to say.
I remember Sari Waldau once saying that for her, authenticity is a way to create trust, because you can trust her to say what she thinks, and it's also a way to save energy, because people know that when she says that, she means that.
well, it almost sounds like, authenticity is good as long as it's not toxic or something like that. So there are different ways of being authentic, but as long as it's a good way, then this is fine. I've read somewhere that kind of this example that he's an asshole, but he's our asshole. And in this, well, I think it was Forbes or something, saying that, well, this bad guys of last century, like Stalin, Hitler, and so on, they were very authentic as well. And, and if you think about the closest circle, probably this guys in this closest circle could have said something like this: he's an asshole, yes, but he's our asshole, because there were some people benefiting from this. But today's Russia, for example, right? But what about all these others, millions of people who actually suffer from this assholeness?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not just stability within the team, it's sort of the general overall impact on organization, culture, and everything else.
And if we talk about well-being with these guys who was very traditional and command and control type, well-being is not the discussion you have with this kind of a leader.
I think that's the key. I mean, I guess the point that Sari was making, and the way I think about it, authenticity should be time, right? So if you're authentic as a leader, if your team is authentic with you, then you don't spend a lot of time cutting through the politics or cutting through misunderstandings, right? You can basically take in new information, adapt, and then turn that into a plan pretty quickly. But if it's command and control, then you can probably do it for a short amount of time, but pretty quickly. If you're in a team where you don't get to say what you feel, or if you don't get to help shape the direction of the team, then I think you're going to put yourself in a place for burnout, or terrible negative social consequences, that kind of stuff. And I'd imagine that would be exactly the kind of thing that comes up in one of Alexei's performance reviews.
I mean, this is actually really a serious issue about this. So we in these discussions we often concerned with how do employees feel about leadership that being applied to them. But what about a leader's well-being as a result of that? Because to me, being authentic, or no, not the other way. So if you're not, for whatever reason, you're gonna be authentic, so you can be relaxed yourself, and you have to act a little bit as a leader. And here I actually kind of recall what Hanna-Kaisa was talking about. She was actually, remember, she was comparing, leadership with ballet, like hard work. You have to really kind of spend a lot of time. There's always, you have to act to some extent. So it involves a lot of emotional labor, actually, which is, there's lots of research that shows that this is really not a good thing in the long term, and can have serious kind of psychological consequences.
It can, and actually there's the one thing I remember discussing at length with many leaders is Dunbar's number. So Dunbar's number is usually applied to things like Facebook, right? It's the number of social interactions that any human can maintain at any time. But there's different layers to that. There's the number of people you can socially stay in touch with and keep in your mind. Then there's the number of people that you can commit to long-term deep relationships. And the Dunbar number for longer term intensive relationships is something like 15. That's its top. And if you ask a manager to take on a team of 20, 25, you're actually breaking something within the person, because most humans can't. What the role of a manager in a development discussion is, I'm going to help you into the future. I'm committed in this relationship with you to move forward together. And if you ask a manager to take 25 of those on board, plus their family situation, plus their friends and their social life, you're putting that person under ridiculous stress. Because particularly there's lots of types of people where you think, I really have to help these 25 people move forward. But how do I fit that into my social schema entirely? So it's really I don't want to say that everything comes back down to numbers, but it is, if you want a proper, a really meaningful development discussion, you shouldn't be in a team that's 20 people plus, I don't think.
With that, we conclude, because I have to go back and do real work.
Okay, we're going to cut that bit out, that's for sure. Let's cut the crap. Okay, that seems like a good place for us to leave it. Anneli, Alexei, thank you very much for today.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Belva.
Thank you. Thank you, Bella.
Bella, I hope your driving lessons continue and are fruitful. And to your handsome driving instructor, hi. I hope you pass her. Let's. We need more mobility. I hope none of the background noise disturbed you. Thank you, Bella. Thank you, Anneli. Thank you, Alexei. Thank you to everybody that's listening at home. Thank you to Aalto for the machinery, and to FatLizard for the fantastic environment and the amazing beer. We will catch you all in a couple of weeks.